We all live these very busy lives. You know that our lives are so busy these days that we either consciously or unconsciously push new people away. I'd like you to imagine for a moment what kind of person you would readily welcome into your life. Think about the qualities of that person. Think about somebody when you're with them, you just feel better about yourself. We're going to spend the next 90 minutes together simply practicing being that person. We know what great coaching is. I'm not going to come in here and tell you what it takes to be a great coach. You all have experienced it in your life. I'm going to challenge you to be more intentional about it. Think about what it would be like if you were the kind of person in an organization who went through the organization, went through your customers' companies, went through your community, your family, as the kind of person who actively sought out the best in others, confronted them with that best, and held them accountable to be the very best. These are the qualities of the coach. How many in this room are artists? Put your hands up, please. How many can sing? I heard a few of you last night, actually. It was pretty bad. How many can dance? We're going to come back. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. There's a wonderful book. It's written by Gordon MacKenzie. He was the creative director of Hallmark Cards. He died of cancer a couple of years ago. Wonderful man. And Gordon MacKenzie would donate a day or two a month to the school systems. And he'd bring in the first grade and spend about an hour with them. So he'd bring them all in and he'd put his art stuff there. He was some kind of carver himself. And he'd say, I'm Gordon MacKenzie. I'm the creative director of Hallmark Cards. I'm an artist. How many of you are artists? How many think put their hands up? 100%. I don't even know what it is. Just give me that hammer and chisel. I'll make that thing hum. 100%. He'd spend an hour with them. He'd talk about their career as artists. He'd talk about creativity. And then he'd send them out and he'd bring the second grade in. Say, I'm Gordon MacKenzie. I'm the creative director of Hallmark Cards. I'm an artist. How many of you are artists? How many would put up their hands? 50%. 50%. He would continue this until the 6th grade. He'd bring in the 6th graders, get them seated down. Say, I'm Gordon MacKenzie. I'm the creative director of Hallmark Cards. I'm an artist. How many of you are artists? How many think put their hands up? None. 0%. Once in a while, that strange kid in the corner might put up his hand like this, but that was really strange. And then you all show up in my classroom here. We are them. We are them. Gordon MacKenzie would talk to the kids in 6th grade and say, what did you do with the artists? Well, how did you drive them all out of the school system between 1st grade and 6th grade? And now I have you here. Most talent goes undiscovered. When we look at people, when we look at a group, when we look at a team, when we look at a customer, when we look at a child, when we look at a wife, people who are coach-like see us as a reservoir of undeveloped talents. Coaches, first and foremost, are talent hunters. This is what we do. This is our task. We believe that great coaching always has accountability and action tied to it. In my coaching practice, and I coach about 6 to 8 C-level executives at any one time, I never, ever conclude a coaching session without holding the executive, who's my client, think of this, holding my executive accountable to do something different. If you're going to talk about it with me, you're going to commit to doing something different, and we're going to talk about it next week. And if you haven't done it, I'm going to want to know why. I hold my clients accountable to their commitments. There are 2 practices and behaviors we do most frequently in organizations when we set out to coach. These are the 2. Giving advice and telling war stories. Giving advice and telling war stories are the most frequent behaviors in organizations when we set out to coach, and I do the same thing. I want to tell you about the way I did it. Let me tell you a story. It's not about my story, it's about your story. Giving advice. We give advice, I know, many times to be helpful, but help is often unhelpful. Challenging people is much more helpful than giving advice. When we're giving advice, we're not coaching. Coaching and giving advice are two different things. It is so difficult not to give advice in a coaching relationship. You'll find that here today when you engage in your own coaching practicums. We want to be helpful. We want to feel useful. We want to show how smart we are. We want to get rid of the pain. That is not coaching. In coaching, we call it letting people stay in the puddle. Have you ever seen anybody who's in trouble, got a problem or something like that? And we call them being in the puddle. They sit there and they flap around in the puddle, making all kinds of a mess. What do we want to do? We want to reach down and grab them and save them, pull them out of the puddle. It's not what great coaches do. We call it leaving people in the puddle, having the courage to leave people in the puddle, help them stand up and walk out on their own. And they'll find the puddle is not that deep. I leave you with these final words. You don't need to try to be a coach. Everybody in this room, you're a great coach. Just launch out and do it. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Yeah.